We've got a lot of shows lined up over the next couple of days, and one of them that we're streaming live right now. All the others will be on PhocusWire.com. But what we wanted to do, given that you're in the middle of Innovation Day and things like that, is get two experts along to have a talk with us for about 15 minutes or so. So we're going to dive straight in with this, Norm. So I mean, you've been overseeing Travel Innovation Summit and launch and all the various things that Phocuswright has been doing for many years. What would you say is the quality of the overall quality of the products coming through at the moment on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being absolutely poor and 10 being I can't wait to invest in it myself? What would you say the overall level of quality is?
So I actually want to answer that with two answers. So I think the overall level of innovation is probably around 5. The quality of presentation is probably around 8. So we've improved very much with how well people pitch, how well they hit the marks as far as the evaluation criteria. But as far as true innovation that's going to change and really alter the underlying kind of ecosystem in travel, it's about a 5.
So they're good at selling or telling the story about something that might not be very good.
Whether it's an attempt to just go around existing processes or take advantage of weaknesses in processes. I mean, that's a kind of a common theme. We've seen a few new areas, such as going after the beach or going after other aspects that haven't been tackled, but there's not a lot of new ideas coming out, which I really like to see, that kind of shake things around and alter maybe the positions and the roles of the players. Okay,
so Ian McHenry, I mean, you are a previous winner of this particular competition, which is why we've asked you to come along this morning. But I mean, the same question first of all. I mean, what would you rate the overall quality, 1 to 10?
Yeah, I mean, I'd put them at a 7. I like to
So you're a lot more optimistic than normal.
I'm more optimistic. I think there's kind of 2 categories out there, and Norm touched on them right. Like there are in fact some that are trying to move around and arbitrage against the way things are set up. And as Chris pointed out on stage, like if you're battling revenue managers, well, revenue managers are going to catch up. But I think the other one that I'm bullish on in the near term is bringing technology that exists in a lot of the other sub-verticals of travel to kind of legacy systems, ground transportation, vacation rentals, tours and activities. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there, and I think you've seen lots of presentations from people innovating in that space. But to your point, it's taking something that has existed in airlines and hotels and bringing it to those sub-verticals.
Okay, I mean, do you miss, your previous winners, we said, do you miss being in their position or?
No, it's better to be on this side of the stage.
Because it's nerve-wracking, because you're talking in front of all your peers, or I mean, what is it?
It's nerve-wracking. That's a huge stage. My advice, half of them have already gone up there, but was don't go in that door. Only go in through the back, and so the first time you see the audience is coming from the back. It's nerve-wracking. You have the top folks in from every single major travel company out there. So it's nice to be on this side.
Yeah. How does a company stand out? Not by the quality of their pitches, but I mean just from what they're thinking of trying to do these days with their innovation with the product.
Well, I probably would like to answer that a little bit again on the opposite. How do they not stand out? And how they do not stand out is if they use buzzwords. We use machine learning. We're artificial intelligence. We're going to be the GDS of tours and activities. We're things that have been said time and time again. Yeah. So the way to really stand out is to put value and actual description on those types of tools. So if you use machine learning, what data set are you going? What have you learned? How have you improved the response? Where is the value, and where's the value to whoever the ultimate customer is?
Right. Okay. Would you say the same thing? I mean, you've had to do this, so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, avoid the buzzwords. But I actually think, we brought we brought an existing technology or an idea, revenue management, to vacation rental. So I'm at fault also for not really doing something that's going to shatter the industry. I'll bet
Did you say that in your pitch though?
Yeah, exactly.
We're not going to shatter the industry.
It's a huge opportunity how it is. But like, you know, it's hard out there. You have big OTAs there, and so doing stuff that's truly going to change the industry, I think you might actually end up losing on stage because it's so groundbreaking.
Right. Okay.
And everyone's going to think this won't work, right? Blockchain. We already heard that once, and everyone kind of laughed. But I actually think that's, you know, a big idea, and there's people working on that. But it will take some time, and I don't think it'll win on stage because a VC, you know, it's a much bigger bet, and it shakes the foundations.
Okay, so I mean, sadly, the failure rate of travel startups is depressingly high. I mean, what kind of words of optimism or encouragement would you give any new business, not just the ones that we're hearing from this week, but just general travel businesses about, because it's a risky game, because not many people come out the other side unscathed.
There's an awful lot of examples over the years from the summit of pivots from B2C to B2B.
Yeah.
Because this idea of trying to compete with the large OTAs and large online travel companies is very, very difficult. Customer acquisition cost is really off the charts. And so I think being flexible enough to see how you could be part of the infrastructure rather than just wanting to have the next consumer brand is probably a good idea to kind of keep in mind.
Okay, I mean, you came with a B2B product.
Yeah, I mean, we came in B2B, and we kind of knew that from the beginning. We'd seen, you know, all of the roadkill along the side about trying to compete, you know, on the consumer side. It's just really hard to do, and, you know, if you can in some way build that brand by having, you know, something that's completely unique, like Airbnb did, great, but in the vast majority of cases, you're better at focusing on technology and letting other people sell your stuff.
Many will remember the boss of a very large meta-search engine calling another emerging meta-search engine roadkill. That's one of the infamous moments of Phocuswright over the last few years. I mean,
And they'll be on stage later, right?
And there'll be, he may well be on stage this week. So, Norm, I mean, having been involved in all this, tell me the name of one or two of the companies that you've seen presenting here that have made you genuinely go, okay, that's really cool. That's got the wow factor, the X factor. You know, you've put your hand in your wallet and think, I'm going to invest in these guys straight away. If you could identify one for us.
Well, I thought one of the better pitches over the years was from the company Root Happy.
Yes.
Which I'm not sure if it's a wow factor as much as, well, this makes a lot of sense. You know, let's find a way to aggregate all this information about airline aspects, you know, Wi-Fi, seat pitch, and so forth, bring that together, and then the fact that they so quickly pivoted to B2B and got Expedia on board, so they got kind of the beachhead customer, I think is a good example of a successful path. As far as wow technology, we've seen some, we see some attempts through, looking at virtual reality or looking at, there was a time looper presentation last year, and some of that stuff was very cool, but it wasn't necessarily the greatest business idea.
Right.
So, you know, I separate the wow factor from, wow, this is a great business idea, as a little bit more of a practical way to look at, rather than just, oh, that was cool technology.
Yeah, and I suppose to that point, Ian, and often you sit there watching these companies present, and the famous sentence is that, you know, it's a great solution desperately looking for a problem to solve, and you often kind of feel sorry for them that they didn't have that kind of eureka moment before they stood up on stage, or before they even decided to found the business, presumably.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. You'll see that there.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit more about the investment market. Now, some might argue that it is sometimes fairly easy to get investment. You know, some capital companies will invest in the opening of a paper bag, it seems sometimes. But, the quality of the things that they're investing is perhaps questionable. But what is the general investment market like at the moment?
From my perception, the biggest criteria for investment is the team. So it's not necessarily the idea or even the opportunity as much as the confidence in the team. So, I mean, Paul English is the obvious example here, is before he really even had a product, he was such a proven commodity that he received investment. Once you go past that, obviously the innovation, the opportunity. I do see, though, investors tend to fall back on something that's familiar. So in the case of his company here, he was presenting something familiar in a different context.
Right.
So it was easy enough to say, oh, well, I understand revenue management, and it's not here in this part of the marketplace, so let's invest in it. The idea of doing something completely outside the realm of something they're familiar with is very difficult for whether it's an angel or whether it's a VC
Right,
or
okay.
a corporate fund.
Okay, and in your experience, raising money was
the first round
easy,
is
hard?
easy. The
okay,
next
how
round
much did you raise in the first round?
Well, I mean, we raised, the first check we got was $300K on a $3 million valuation, and then we raised another million, and then $2 million after that. But really, it's sort of like, hey, how do you get to making that first $1 million in actual revenue?
Right.
And once you're there, it's great. You've done better maybe than 80% of the companies out there, but you got a long way to go still.
Okay.
And that's kind of the lesson too. Is just here it's like, great, hey, you win, maybe you get that round of investment. You got a long way to go to get to 50, 100, 200 $million in revenue if you want to be a standalone public company.
Right.
And so it's just starting.
Okay, so I mean, it's related to this then. So we've seen over the last few years the emergence of large established travel brands creating their own labs or their own incubator systems. A two-part question: what's their motivation? We'll go with you first, Ian. I mean, what's their motivation for doing that? First of all, and do you think there's really anything in it for them?
I mean, you want to seem innovative, right? And so there's a bit of that, and you kind of want to absorb that innovation from these small startups that you might not have as a bigger company. I think that's one source of innovation or source for doing that. It's it's interesting, right? Like, why invest in these little startups? There can be two reasons. Like, one is to absorb that innovation. Two could be like, hey, if you have a robust API and you want people using that, say Amadeus or Travelport or something,
right.
and then you can give that to them. You get them when they're small, and they're kind of they're hooked on it later, right?
And I suppose there's an acqui-hire motivation behind it as well.
Somewhat. I think we've seen some of that happen recently. Booking.com made some acquisitions for personnel, and others have done that. I think that there is almost a point where the word innovation itself has become lip service.
Yep.
It doesn't mean anything. And the problem that, whether it's the corporate funds or whatever, incubators or accelerators, is once they have a product, do they bring it back to the core company, and does it make a difference?
Right.
Yep.
That's where the stumbling block still is. And I agree with what he said a moment ago, which is some of it's kind of self-serving. Let's keep them on our platform. Let's do that.
And it's good PR for a lot of them.
Yeah, true innovation is like what happened with OS systems and Linux,
right.
where we had the entire community of software developers really changing a core OS that's in a data center. We need to see that type of innovation, not just accelerators and spot type of innovation based on individual efforts. We need a community effort to really change things.
Okay.
And that's not in their interest. Imagine, do you think Amadeus or Travelport or one of them would do, there's some blockchain providers like Winding Tree, for instance.
Yeah.
On one hand, you say, hey, let's invest in these blockchain people because they're the ones that are going to disrupt us. The other time, you say, hey, we want to protect ourselves against that because this is the one thing that could bring us down.
Well, I think true innovation is evolutionary, not necessarily revolutionary.
Right.
So if it's viewed as, well, this is an immediate threat, then there's all sorts of PR and negative things that come down the pipe to try to prevent that from happening.
Right.
I think what we'll see is more of an evolutionary effort, whereas we start gaining more and more independent software developers, we'll see more and more traction and change things.
So on that point, interestingly, someone on one of the pundit shows that we had earlier in this morning was saying that most of the innovation in the online travel industry has probably now happened. So it's the rate of it is going to slow down. So we've got a minute or so left. So would you agree with that? And if not, why not?
I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
So I think that a lot of travel companies, again, are giving somewhat lip service to mobile when mobile has been a major shift. I think blockchain will be a major shift in the way things are processed, reducing costs for everybody.
Okay.
So there's a lot more to come. I mean, I'm in the Valley, I'm in the Silicon Valley. There's a lot of a lot of excitement around a lot of new technology. AI, we're on the very, very beginnings. So I think it's absolutely wrong to think that innovation's over.
Okay, so we are going to have to wrap it up there. So thank you very much to Norm Rose and Ian McHenry. We'll be back for lots of more shows this week. Thanks ever so much for listening, everybody.